when we talk about chargebacks and this, I've been getting more and more questions from sales partners around this topic, right? When I did a poll on our Facebook group page, this was one of the things that was mentioned in there. I think, Ken, maybe you were the one that dropped it in there, and I knew it was something that needed to be done because the landscape in the chargeback space has changed significantly over the last couple years. Let's just not beat around the bush, right? The card brands are our friends, right? We have to, like, the people that enter this industry and view the card brands as the enemy or the great whatever, you're just limiting yourself right out of the gate, okay? Once you understand that we have to work with the card brands as payment professionals, we represent the card brands, okay? You don't want to bad mouth them, but at the same time, there's no joking around that the landscape has changed in how the card brands find favor in chargebacks. They are leaning much more towards the cardholder, and this really got ignited through COVID. And it's been very frustrating because some merchants who would get an occasional chargeback and they had won every single one of them now have a chargeback and they lose and they don't understand. And then they blame us. So this entire session is an educational piece to help you better understand the current landscape of what the chargeback atmosphere looks like, what the role of the processor is, how you can best set expectations, establish best practices for merchants, and then giving you and the merchants resources to be an expert in this space and help your merchants navigate the chargeback arena, right? We want to help keep merchants from even getting them. We don't want to see disputes coming in. So if we can do the right proactive work, it's going to limit them. But once they come in, what is the expectations? What is the documentation they need? What are some of the things that they need to do to help win? Or even have the perspective of, I'm not going to win it. I'm not going to get distracted with it. I'm just going to keep moving. So there's 3 primary chargeback causes I want to make sure that you fully understand. Now, there's a whole bunch of other reason codes, right? You can Google a lot of this stuff. And for the sake of knowledge, I'm not regurgitating stuff that I just Googled. I talked to our NAB EPX dispute team. You know, I've talked to Visa. I've been emailing American Express and MasterCard. Like, I went to the experts that deal with this on a regular basis to put this content together. And so when you look at the 3 primary chargeback causes, this is like your 85, 90% of all chargebacks can be grouped into one of these 3 categories. And I want to talk about each one before I go into some of the other things that you need to understand. Number 1, an unauthorized transaction is simply that. Me as the cardholder didn't, or I claim, did not authorize that transaction. This can be the form of a stolen card number, right? Literally somebody, and I had this happen, woke up one day and bank account was in the negative. Somebody got my card number and made a bunch of purchases. Now, they were dumb, did it all over the weekend, and nobody was shipping anything. So Monday morning when I noticed that, I immediately called my bank. They called everybody, and I think one company shipped hair extensions. Weird, right? But the people who had that card number didn't get all of the product that they were trying to get because I quickly noticed what was going on. That was still a pain, but those were all unauthorized transactions. So an unauthorized transaction will be the number 1 charge or reason of chargebacks. Let's talk about some other unauthorized transactions that we may not think about. If somebody's name is not on the card or on that account, technically, the cardholder can issue an unauthorized transaction chargeback claim, and they will win. And this even happens with family members, and this is where it's called friendly fraud, right? I give my card to my son, who I wouldn't because he's almost 12, but in theory, right? I give my card to my son, I say, yeah, go pick up the pizza. He takes my card and runs that transaction. They don't check the ID, they don't check that stuff. I forget that I bought pizza that night because I was too busy doing whatever I did and forgot that my son, I'm going, I never walked into that pizza place and bought pizza. Somebody must have stolen my card number. Chargeback, this is an unauthorized transaction. Well, even if it comes back and then the consumer, or the merchant rather, shows a signed receipt, and I'm like, that's not me. That's not my signature. I did not sign that. that merchant loses, even though it was my son. Think about this expanded into the business world. I have a business card. I give it to my employee to go pick up lunch for people or to order this product or order that product. All of those technically can be unauthorized transactions. So in the business world, anybody who could potentially use that card needs to be able to use that card to protect the merchant. The second biggest category currently, and this is something newer, this is something that has been going on over the last couple of years, is a quality dispute. And this, and I'll show you towards the end as we go through this, to where what the card brands have moved from finding more in favor with the merchant on this kind of stuff to taking the stand of, hey, we want the merchant and the cardholder to kind of play nice and work it out. So if a merchant files a quality dispute, 99 out of 100 times they will win. The cardholder will win this dispute. And I'll give you an example. As a buddy of mine, they have a very high-end furniture store, right? It's more of an art gallery. And I think I might have used them before in different examples. But one of the things they do, if they got these amazing outdoor things, they've got these fountains and everything else, right? So imagine, I'm going to use some fake numbers because I don't remember the exact one, but let's say somebody, a customer, ordered a $5,000 fountain, okay? And it was shipped 4 hours away. And they installed this fountain in the backyard, hook it all up, everything's working, we're good. 45 days later, 60 days later, the fountain stops working. Why? Because they forgot to put water in it. And in a hot summer in California, it's kind of an important thing, and the motor burned up. Well, this merchant happens to have an all sales are final policy that they heavily leaned on through the years, and they won chargebacks all the time when people try to, do these types of things. Well, now all of a sudden, the merchant, the cardholder calls the merchant, says, hey, you need to come pick up this fountain. I want my money back. It's not working. Well, did you keep water in it? Well, yeah, but it did run dry and we put more water in it. It's not working. Well, that's not our fault. Well, anyways, long story short, the cardholder wasn't happy with it. And they filed a chargeback. They said they weren't happy with the quality of this fountain. And even despite their policy, the signed receipts, the delivery receipt, all of those things, the card holder won. Right? Sounds crazy, right? And those are the conversations I have with my buddy. Like, how do they do that? Like, how can they win this? How can they expect to continue to perform and serve their customers if simple things like that can happen? Well, obviously the card, you can go back and pick up the merchants. They're not going 4 hours away and having it picked up. I mean, the time to pay somebody to do that, it just wasn't worth it. Now, their only recourse in that scenario was to tell the cardholder, you're now in possession of stolen property. It's your responsibility to return it, or they file a police report. So there's things that merchants can do to help with those things, but that was a quality dispute. This is one of the things that furniture stores have actually been seeing for quite a while, especially mattresses, because nobody wants to return a mattress, right? Oh, I slept on it for 30 days. I didn't sleep good. My back now hurts. I want to return a mattress. Sorry, we don't sell used mattresses. Quality dispute, furniture store loses. So these are the things I want you to understand, because there's practices and policies we're going to come in place and misconceptions that we're going to overcome to help build proper expectations and allow merchants to change some of their policies and practices to help better protect themselves from quality disputes. And then number 3, improper transaction type. And yes, these still happen. This is where you take a chip card and swipe it. In a chipped environment that we all live in now, you swipe a chip card, it doesn't even have to be the card holder. It can be the issuing bank that sits there and goes, whoa, this is a chip card. It was a swipe transaction. We don't know if that's fraud or not. It could be a counterfeit card. Chargeback, and the card holder doesn't even know. They usually notify them, right? But they initiate the chargeback because it was ran incorrectly. And as you know, with the EMV stuff that changed in 2015, anything that it pushes the liability down to the merchant to have the technology to run it in the most secure manner. So even if, follow my train of thought here, right? Let's say a liquor store, they're running an old legacy POS and they're swiping cards. And of course, liquor stores have cameras all over the place. And you could have that card holder on camera smiling, that card holder signing the signature. But if it's swiped instead of chipped and there's a chargeback initiated, it does not matter. That merchant will lose the chargeback. And it has nothing to do with the merchant. It has nothing to do with the processor unless the processor is failing to provide EMV equipment. But it has everything to do with pushing liability because the transaction was ran incorrectly. This can also happen in an environment that's widely retail and the cards are keyed in, right? So keyed in transactions that could be run as EMV open up the door, and we're going to talk a little bit about those types of things. So what can merchants do? And I categorize it as the best offense is a great defense. Understand the different environments and merchant needs. And I want to go through this first, then go through understanding all the players in a chargeback scenario before we go into the best practices, because I'm going to help build your education around this. There's certain business environments, and all of these have a different experience from a consumer card holder makeup profile, right? The card present transactions. You have those situations where, hey, hand in my card, right? A restaurant, a this or whatever, or handing it across the counter. I'm handing them my card. Think about it. That has different opportunities. I can literally flip it over and check name, signature, etc. I can ask for ID, and I can hold that card and validate it, help protect myself if I'm a merchant. That's one scenario of a card present transaction. What about where the card is not handled, where there is a device where I, as the consumer, control the experience? I'm not ever handing my card over to the merchant to validate the signature or request ID. I'm in control of that. And same thing, card present in a digital format. I'm going to use my phone. I'm going to use Apple Pay, NFC, those types of things. What does that look like? Then you have the card not present, two primary environments. And I really want you to understand the differences between the two, because this not only helps with the chargeback case, but chargeback education, but also when you're properly selling proper equipment and everything else. So you have card not present in a MODO/virtual terminal aspect. This is MODO stands for mail order, telephone order. So think about it. I'm taking phone numbers over the phone, or they filled out a sheet and I'm keying it in a virtual terminal and destroying that information, or I have it in a recurring billing perspective within a virtual terminal. Those are all card not present transactions. And then you have the card not present transaction perspective, where me as the merchant, I don't ever see the card number, right? I can have it two different ways. I can have it as an e-commerce, meaning there's a shopping cart, they're buying things and I'm responsible to ship it, or it's payment links. They go to the website, they key in their own information and then make a payment. So those become more of your full e-commerce profiles, where the merchant, where the card holder is entering all of their information. And then we want to talk a little bit about, and again, these are business environments, some best practices around these things. The all sales are final environments. We've all been there, right? Whether it's a business going out of business or something that does custom work, things of that nature, right? A quilt company, they do custom quilts. Well, of course, all sales are final. If you bring them, hey, I want these pattern, this color, and everything else, they're going to have an all sales are final policy. Documentation to attain. We want to talk a little bit about that, because there's some stuff that can be attained at the beginning. Now, it may not protect from a chargeback scenario, but you might whittle out the people that are going there with fraudulent aspects in mind, because they get a little bit more scared. And then we want to talk about online security to enable. If you're doing anything online, you want to have all of those pieces put together. So who is affected in a chargeback? Again, I know this isn't the most exciting information, but this is all information that you need to know. It'll help you as you educate your merchants, and heaven forbid, if they actually have a chargeback and contact you for help, guess what? You're building expertise. These are the things you want to know in order to be that expert that they can rely on. So number one, you have the card holder. It's the consumer that's paying by a card, right? They're the one that own that account. They have the transaction taken from their bank, or it appears on their bank statement or their credit card statement. They've applied the credit, right? The card holder can initiate a chargeback. Then you've got the merchant. So at the end of the day, the merchant is liable for the transaction, accepting payments through POS, website, or any other methods. The merchant can also be at risk of taking a loss on products that either walk out the door or that they ship, and services depending on the situation and the merchant's best practices that they put in place. We want to help them avoid losses. Merchants can lose also an additional, if they lose the initial chargeback dispute and they decide to take it to arbitration, they stand to lose $500 plus an additional $100 in fees if they lose the arbitration. So the merchant is liable for quite a bit of stuff. And then you've got the issuing bank. The issuing bank is the bank behind the card and the cardholder. They also can initiate a chargeback. So there's only two parties that can initiate chargebacks, either the cardholder or the issuing bank. Okay, they can see potential risk and initiate that chargeback. And this was seen a lot on the emergence of EMV. It's one of the reasons why restaurants oftentimes, and why I worked with some specifically to get the EMV solutions in on micros and everything else, because they were seeing this abundance, especially in major markets, of issuing bank initiated chargebacks because chip cards were being swiped and they didn't want to take the risk of fraudulent activity on that. Sometimes the cardholder, like I said, was completely unaware that they had initiated that chargeback on their behalf. Then you have the card brands. Again, we want to work with the card brands. Doesn't mean we always have to like all their decisions. Doesn't mean we have to understand it all. Doesn't mean like that. But we're in a space where they are our partners in the bigger picture. Okay? Card brands are the ones that review the dispute. They're the ones that we want to work with to help win those when needed. They are the ones that are going to request the documentation. We have to send the documentation. They can initially find in favor of the cardholder or the merchant, and that initial, either way, whether it's in favor of the merchant or the cardholder, can then be going to arbitration by either party, where those arbitration fees can then apply, right? People have the opportunity to fight it, even if they lose the initial dispute. And then you've got the processor, right? The processor or the full service provider. And this is one of the things where we start building out proper expectations and understanding. They carry the risk, okay? Second to the merchant, the full service provider carries the risk on those transactions. If the merchant does not have the money in the bank account to cover a chargeback, we're liable. Because what the card brands do in this situation, if there's a $350 chargeback, they're removing it from us. We have to transmit that money to the card brands. Now it's on us to take it from the merchant. If the merchant has insignificant funds or insufficient funds, we don't get a chance to recoup that opportunity. We saw this years ago when a chain of furniture stores went out of business, and all of a sudden, all of those orders that people didn't receive, and they closed their doors overnight. Think about it, right? Let's say you order a couch and it's supposed to be delivered in 45 days. Well, next week, or let's call it after Christmas, poof, they closed their doors. Well, hold on a second. I didn't get my couch. It's scheduled for delivery on January 27th. Chargeback. Well, more than likely, guess what? That business, they closed their doors. Their bank accounts are probably at zero. Who's liable for that chargeback? The processor, the full service provider. And helping merchants understand that we are actually partnering with them because we carry risk too. So we don't want to see disputes. We don't want to see opportunity for losses. We want to help have the technology and help you build the best practices to keep those things from happening. The processor is responsible to move that money between the parties, right? We'll talk a little bit more on the role of processor shortly. Some more key chargeback information. Look, again, the card brands have built this around to protect the cardholder. And think about it from a buyer or a cardholder behavior. If all of us are cardholders, how often do we check our activity on our credit card statements? Once a month when the statement comes out? So if they only provided a 7-day window, but there was a purchase made on the 3rd, I don't check it till the beginning of the next month. That's more than 30 days. They've got to make sure people have room, and that way you can do that due diligence. Well, here's a cardholder. Dude, it's been 6 months. You didn't think to go back and look at this stuff regularly? You have a responsibility to check these things. So they put limits. So time frame on a chargeback that needs to be made. Visa has a 120-day standard, 75 days on some issues. MasterCard's 120 days. American Express is 120 days. Discover's 120 days. So cardholders of those different card brands have 120 days to file a chargeback dispute when it's warranted. Now, once that chargeback has been done, what time frame does it need to be disputed within? Visa has 30 days. All right, once you notice it, there's a 30-day window there to find in favor or not, and then it can be a 10-day arbitration. MasterCard gives 45 days for each stage. Okay, You have the initial dispute, you can have arbitration, etc. American Express has 20 days for each stage. And then that's how many days the merchant has to respond to the chargeback. Like I said, the cardholder has 120 days to file one. If it's an American Express, that merchant has 20 days to address the dispute, provide information, etc. Discover, 30 days. Now, what has happened is in most environments, merchants they get it by snail mail, and all of a sudden they get it in the mail, go, hold on, I've got 3 days till this expires, or in some cases, it's even actually already expired by the time they open it up and look at it. Now they're out. So that's one of the things that the processor can actually help. And in our case with NAB and EPX, we have it built out, and you're going to see that in a second. So let's dive a little bit further into the role of the processor in these chargeback scenarios, because now you see here, you have how long a cardholder has, and then you have how long a merchant has. Well, we want the merchant to respond to those, right, and win. So what does the processor have to do with the chargeback? I'm going to read these off. And again, these are all you're going to get these PDFs emailed to you afterwards. I'm also going to drop them in as a handout that you can upload and keep. Okay, so the processor, again, I already talked about the risk. They carry all of the risk. The processor is responsible to move money back and forth. And if you did our session, and it sits on YouTube as well, on EPX, the power of EPX and the power you have, you understand the roles of the different components of that transaction, from the ISO, the full service provider, to a front end and back end. So because NAB also owns EPX, we have that responsibility to move that money back and forth. The processor can help facilitate the notice of chargebacks to the merchant, and this is where technology can really come into play. The processor can help provide the documentation to the card brands during the chargeback process and be an advocate for that merchant. Depending on the size of the processor, like I said, they could have an entire team or not. This is why it's really important when you look at who are you partnering with to provide services to your merchant, ask them, do you guys have an entire chargeback team that is an advocate if a merchant gets a chargeback? How do you guys help support that merchant? How does it handle? In this case, we have a team over at EPX, and I'm going to talk about some of the ways to get in touch with them. It's the head of that entire team I sent this deck to, right? I sent all of these points for proper validation before I shared it with you. I want to rely on the expertise our business and our company has to make sure I'm helping you build your expertise in the right way. And then if the merchant wins the chargeback dispute, the processor will deposit the funds back to the merchant. Like, they help with all of that. And this is where value in EPX and NAB come into play, right? North American Bancorp built technology to help merchants. In the payments hub, there is a disputes section off to the left. Now, these are screenshots and pictures I'm going to show you from a merchant login perspective. In your partner portal, you can also see open disputes for specific merchants so you can stay informed. But this is where a merchant can go in and look and get more information. There's a payments hub dispute section. There are alerts that can be set to when the chargeback occurs. So in there, you want to be able to make sure those alerts are turned on. NAB has products in card not present and card present scenarios that help, right? They're going to acquire as much information as possible for that merchant and then assist with that. Then our management team is going to help assist. And then NAB has strong relationships with the card brands. Remember how I said that card brands are our friends? Because of the size and the position in the marketplace that NAB has, we oftentimes work with the card brands on bigger picture projects. So that means we often have a little bit more leverage when it comes to really advocating for the merchant in situations that don't make sense, right? And because we look at that as a partnership, they're not our enemy. They are people that are there to help us. I have contacts with the card brands in my phone. Last Thursday night, I had an hour-long conversation with our rep from Visa on this topic, on the phone, while driving, cell phone to cell phone, right? We have the ability to go straight to the source and not play the guessing game. I wanted to show you a couple of screenshots within the merchant side of the Payments Hub because you may not have seen these. Like I said, you can actually go in and under the FAQ, we try to educate the merchant and provide that information for them. And then in the business settings, this is where you want to make sure businesses are they're turning on dispute notifications, right? This is my account. I took a screenshot from my account. And if you have your own account, you set up a demo account, which we'll talk about in the product suite overview, you can see all this stuff too. In the dispute notifications, you want to make sure that that email is listed in there so that way that email can take place, that they can see it when it happens. Now, what are some of the best practices to follow when it comes to protecting from most chargebacks? And again, this is setting proper expectations. There is no way that I would walk into a merchant and say, I'm going to protect you from all chargebacks. Now, there's services out there that help with that, and merchants pay for that and let them handle it, but there's a cost. This is just standard business practices. We want to talk through the card present business environment first. Number one, do not run a chip card as a swipe transaction, period. Okay, if you insert the chip and it does not work, ask for another card. That's what I tell the merchants. And I let them know, if you run it as a swipe, you're opening up the door for a potential loss. Your choice. You might know that card holder, you might be what you want to do, but I at least have the responsibility to educate you on that. Avoid keying in transactions when you can run it in a card present transaction properly, right? So in a case in point in this, I order something, let's say I'm ordering a bike for my daughter, and I'm over the phone and I'm talking to the bike shop, and I order the bike and they're like, how would you like to pay for this? Well, can I pay for it over the phone? Sure. Okay, I still got to pick up the bike, right? Still going in there to get it. It's a local bike shop. Or what I'm going to sit there and say is, I'd rather you just pay when you come in. Do you mind doing that when you come in to pick up the bike? Now all of a sudden I'm moving from taking that in a keyed in and costing more to a transaction that I can actually insert the chip and better protect myself. Third thing, and when this actually is a big red flag too, splitting transactions. Now I'm not talking about, hey, there's 4 of us at a table, can you split it evenly between all 4? That is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about I'm walking into that bike shop and I'm buying a $1,000 bike and I hand them 3 different cards that I want to put it on. That is a massive red flag. Okay, and I'm not talking about, hey, I've got a $100 Visa gift card and I want to put the rest of it on American Express. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about 3 different cards. Educate merchants that is a big red flag and they need to be aware. And do I want to do that? Could this person be using 3 stolen cards and walking away with a $1,000 bike and I'm out that bike along with the chargeback pain and the money and everything else? Those are things that we want to look at. Do not run a transaction if the person presenting the card is obviously not the person listed on the card. Somebody hands me a card and it says Sally Smith, and I look up and I'm like, dude, you don't look like a Sally, right? And I'm going to ask, do you have ID for this card? Are you an authorized signer on this card? If not, can you pay with another form of payment? And I'm going to hand that card back. Because again, that's going to keep you from that unauthorized transaction possibility. If you are leery of the transaction, right? If the merchant's leery of it, follow your instincts. It's amazing. And when I was talking to our lead team person, it's amazing the conversations that they have sometimes with merchants. Merchants literally go, yeah, I just didn't have the right feeling about this, but blah, 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 blah. And they go through to explain the situation and they did it anyways. And now they're out $1,000 or products, right? And follow your gut. Sometimes it's better to lose the sale than lose the money. Okay, like follow your gut. Understand that in most states, there is a 3-day buyer's remorse period that must be considered when they're building their practices. And this is really important in that all sales are final perspective or ones that take deposits, right? Be clear about your refund and return policy. Be very clear about that. And if you're in a high ticket environment, obviously you want to put stuff on the receipts, but you actually may need to have another documentation that merchant signs along with the receipts. That way it provides that protection. If I'm selling furniture like my buddy's store, right, basically art, and it's a high-end ticket, not only all sales are final, on the receipt is going to be there, but I'm also going to have a secondary documentation as part of that bill of sale that lists out in more detail all sales are final, and I'm going to alter it to have some exceptions, defects, quality questions, blah, blah, blah. Here is our policy for rectifying it. If these are not followed, blah, 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 please sign here that you understand and make that customer sign off on it. Will it always win? No, but did I add a layer to help them? Absolutely. Avoid rerunning old transactions, right? Or not batching the terminal. I remember we had years ago, a sales partner that set up a merchant, and I still don't understand how this happened, but they didn't batch the terminal for like 75 days. Kid you not. Don't understand it. You would think you would realize you're not getting any deposits. And they realized, and then they batched it. Well, guess what? A lot of those transactions expired. They didn't get those funds. The ones that were even older, they're like, I didn't go to this place then. You know, the cardholder sees that. Or even the ones that might have been to try to be rerun, we have to people sign off on a form, and that way they can contact it. That might be what happens in a high ticket, but it becomes a real risk because any of those rerun transactions or old transactions definitely run the risk of a chargeback being happen. Now, some of those merchants might win those, right? Think about it. You're a card holder. You go into a restaurant. Today is the 16th. Okay, you eat there on the 16th. You know you went in there on a Thursday, and then for some reason that transaction doesn't get run until December 30th. And you're just looking at your statement going, December 30th? I wasn't in there. I was gone on vacation between Christmas and New Year's. That wasn't me. Chargeback. Now, the merchant may win that by going, well, actually, it was this date. Here's the signed receipt. Blah, blah, blah. Oh, okay, yes. But guess what? That merchant's still going to get charged the chargeback fee, right? The merchant still has to go through that work to get it done. The cardholder still has that experience that they associate with that merchant possibly in a negative light. These are the things that we want to make sure we're educating our merchants on. In a deposit environment, because of the quality chargeback initiative, right? The merchants need to consider taking other forms of payment possibly for the deposit if they are worried about that risk. And what I mean by that is I walk in and I put a deposit on a hot tub, and then I get home and I have a little bit of regret. My spouse is like, I don't want that. I found a better one over here. And I go in, I go, hey, I need my money back. Well, we're not going to move forward with this hot tub. Well, we have a no refund policy on our deposit. It's a deposit for a reason. That's okay. I just need it back. And the merchant then goes, sorry, we're not giving you your deposit back. We actually ordered a hot tub because you placed a deposit. We have it coming in. What's crazy is that card holder can actually file a quality one that I changed my mind because I wasn't happy with the quality compared to the other things on the market for that price range. Well, what just happened? That merchant just got put in a position where they could potentially lose. And we want to make sure that we're helping merchants understand that have that, and then also educate them that we need to make sure that they're understanding the risks. Again, set alerts and payments hub as an EPX NAB merchant to get any notifications. And then if they have questions throughout the process, even with their own, as they're building their best practices, they can sit there and send an email to epxescalations@nabankcard.com at any time. They can provide documentation. They can say, look, this is our current policy. This is what we're looking to change it. Will it help protect us? Like, we are there for them. Now let's talk about card not present business environments, right? Make sure full address verification is enabled. Is it a no? It's like, will you win by having that? No, but especially in a CNP environment, if cardholders can't provide all that information, they're not going to make the purchase, especially on a website, right? You're going to weed out the fraud by requesting more information, and then collect and enter the full address in those Modo situations as well. Again, I need the billing address, full billing address, because what that also allows you to do is you can double check that against the shipping address. And you want to make sure, again, you don't want to split transactions into multiple cards. Some of these are redundant, but one of the bigger red flags also is where you see the shipping address doesn't match the billing address. Oh, but Keith, I'm having it directly shipped to this customer or this person because it's a gift. That's fine. They can Google the address, see if it's valid, and then do those types of things, right? To where they can double check it and even send, and you'll see in here, I'm gonna go through these a little bit quickly. They can send an email asking, hey, can we double check this address, etc. They can see, is there some warehouse somewhere? It's a shipping company, right? Those are the types of things. If you're getting leery of it, follow your instincts. You got that 3 days buyer's remorse. Depending on the delivery service, and going back to my friend's story on the fountain, one of the things they could have done to help them was on the delivery of the fountain is if they would have had a notation, not just received, but specifically a second section that says received, inspected, and happy with the quality of the fountain. And the merchant were to sign that, that or the card holder were to sign that on delivery, my buddy probably would have won that chargeback dispute. So having proper documentation and understanding that quality is an issue, that you can sit there and same thing in those deposit scenarios, having documentation, I'm making a deposit, I'm happy with the quality, blah, 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 and signing off on it will give merchants more fighting ammunition. Check the ID against the card in pickup situations. Go through that right now with an online restaurant that does online ordering, right? In a major city, it's high ticket. They were having some chargeback disputes and fraud taking place. They put a notification on their website that we will check all ID against the card used to order the product. They saw some of their orders go down, but those are all the fraudulent ones anyways, because people knew I didn't have the ID, so they stopped placing the orders. I talked about, deposit environments, take a deposit ACH if possible, etc., even for a card not present situations. Wait to ship the products to need to verify the transaction. If you need to verify it with us, you're leery about it, there's something ain't right here, get with our team, verify the transaction, maybe contact the card holder that is listed on file and stuff, and verify it, okay? Big thing here, and I helped years ago a merchant with this. They lost money, okay? Fortunately, they didn't ship the $10,000 horse carriage that this person paid for. But what they did do is they lost $3,000 because what happened here was you had a person that had stolen cards, claimed to be a doctor from another country, and then purchased a custom horse carriage and wanted it shipped to the Bahamas, which you and I might sound crazy, but this client, our client, that was the norm. That was their business. Okay, was these amazing custom, $20,000 to $50,000 horse carriages. Not only did they take the payment, this card holder goes, hey, I need you to, as part of the deal here, I need you to pay for the shipping. I'll pay for it. Okay, I'm gonna give you a card number, run it, but here's who I need you to wire money to. I don't have the ability to wire the money. I need you to wire money to this place to pay for the shipping. And here's where you're gonna ship it to because they have to put it in a container and ship it to the Bahamas. And the merchant took the payment over the phone on the credit card and then wired the money. They were out. It was stolen cards. So never take payments and then send money to other services on those payments. Depending on the transaction size and instincts, like I said, you can even research. Like in that case, I would have told the guy, especially, this is years ago, but now look up that doctor. Find that doctor on social media. They're probably going to have a Facebook profile page. Has it been established for a long period of time? Do things add up, right? Is there a different phone number and email address for that doctor on LinkedIn than what they gave you? Any of those types of things can help you just research depending on the gut feeling you have. And then get a phone number and then call back, email, ask questions, see if the story continues to line up. And then be very clear about your refund and return policy, especially online. And again, EPX escalations, if you I just want to make sure, contact them, let them help you before it happens. Misconceptions, before we close this out with some of the assets that I'm going to send you, is collecting copies of IDs offers more ammunition in all chargeback situations. Absolutely. You can, again, that swipe transaction, you can get a copy of the front and back, take pictures of the driver's license. Won't help. Okay, but by asking for those documents, sometimes, again, it's going to deter the fraud, or, oh, I don't have that picture ID. Sorry, I'm not going to finish the transaction. These are best practices, but not foolproof options. That collecting and entering the full address in a moto situation will protect you. It will not, nor does it save you any money, right? It's just, again, a best practice to rule out and keep fraudulent behavior from happening. That contactless payments will protect you from chargeback scenarios. It won't. I could have a stolen card, put it in my Apple Pay and use it. Now, I don't know about like device tracking and all that stuff that could come back into play. It seems a lot riskier, but in theory could happen. When it's the card holder's word versus the merchant's word, the merchant will always win. It's not. That's where the card brands have moved more into the card holder's favor, right? Word against word. They said this, he said, she said. The card brands are going to support the card holders. It can be very not fair, but merchants need to know that so that way they can put their better practices in place to help keep it from being word on word. Again, a signed signature that they were happy and satisfied with the product when it's delivered no longer becomes word on word. So understanding those misconceptions. That all sales are final as a protection doesn't mean jack squat. It really doesn't. Not in a quality situation, not in unauthorized situations, any of those types of things. It doesn't matter. Again, a swipe card and a chip transaction, the issuer initiates a card back. They don't care if there's an all sales or final. They're going to do it. Having all documentation will protect you in all circumstances. It's not. Just get everything you can, right? Have the merchants get everything they can. And that the merchant will not have to do everything you can to make it right with the cardholder. They have to, right? It literally states that, and I'm going to show you that here in a second on MasterCard statement, right? But some resources from Visa. There's a website here. It's going to be in the deck that I give you. I'm going to send you the PDF on the requirements and everything else. And then we're also getting all the key changes that Visa made in October. I'll follow up and send that to you guys as well. MasterCard, same thing. I have these two PDFs that I will send you afterwards. It's a Chargebacks Made Simple. This is just from November of this year, so it's incredibly relevant and current information. But you can see right there and this is a PDF that you'll get from MasterCard. Underline, bold. Think this has some weight? We strongly encourage issuers to have cardholders attempt to resolve the disputes with the merchants before processing a chargeback. So they're going to tell the cardholders to try to resolve it. That means they want that conversation to take place. That also means the merchant needs to do everything they can to resolve it with a cardholder. They also have email addresses to be able to send stuff if needed. So before we go into some quick Q&A, the GitHub one will be a little bit shorter, and so I don't mind going over a little bit in this to look at the questions. 3 key takeaways to help merchants with chargebacks. If you have a website, I'm going to do this. After getting all this information, this is one of the things I'm going to do over the holidays. I'm going to add a chargeback educational section to my website. I want you to do the same thing for yours. These PDFs that I'm going to send you, I'm going to put on my website where merchants can go and download it themselves and look at it. It's out there, right? This is information that doesn't need to be behind walls. So why not, for brand recognition, drive merchants back to my website for resources they need to protect themselves, right? Some of these best practices that we went over, I'm going to list them on the website. Now, obviously, I'm also going to have a disclaimer on there that following these best practices does not guarantee that no chargebacks will take place or that you'll win every one, but these will help limit it. Put this stuff out there, make sure your merchants know where to go find it, build the value in yourself, build your brand recognition by actually driving it to your website, not just Google. Second thing, properly educate your merchants and build value. Again, when you are an expert, even in things that aren't fun, you have value. The ability to solve problems gives you more value. The third thing, make sure throughout this, the educational piece and by having the assets, make sure they understand the value through Payments Hub and our team. They are not alone. Other providers do not have the resources that we have dedicated to helping merchants run their business and help mitigate risk. They will get the notification in the mail. They have a couple days. They have to go digging, and then they have to follow those instructions. They don't have a team helping them. Make sure your merchants know where they can go if there is a dispute, how to learn more information about disputes, how to submit their documentation digitally. So on that note, let's roll into some quick Q&A here and see if anybody has anything on the chargebacks. All right, Michael's got a question. Got a discount firearms client, sell online, accept charge card, authorized, but later cardholder disputes it. What to do? Maybe some of this answered you. I mean, they sell online, you know what I mean? They accepted the charge card, it was authorized. It depends on the dispute reason of why, right? If they got that purchase in and they weren't happy with the quality, you know, the merchant is responsible. Number one, they need to have a very clear return and refund policy. If it's unused, unboxed, or manufacturer defect, I mean, this is where it just depends merchant to merchant. I can't really answer that because I don't know what their policy is. I don't know what the condition was. I don't know the reason why they filed a chargeback, but hopefully some of the stuff that you guys saw up there will help with that. Same scenario with the fountain. What if the fountain was bought online? Does it make a difference? Not at all. No difference whatsoever. Okay, so at the end of the day, these quality disputes are very, very difficult for the merchant to win. This is why they have to do the due diligence, and they ultimately want to make sure that they have like, I mean, it sucks, but merchants may have to change the way that they are dealing with their budgets, right? They might have to, where they've never dealt before with a line item, just like they do their electricity and rent and payroll, a line item on their budget for loss. And then they're going to budget a certain percentage of sales against the loss. And it might affect what they have to charge, right? Just like they do with utilities. But it's the landscape that we live in. Will we get a copy of this presentation, Andre? Absolutely. Here soon, I will actually upload it into the handout section, and I'll be emailing it to you guys along with those PDFs from MasterCard and Visa that will help you guys in this category. Yes, you can share documents with the merchants court. Absolutely. You started this session. Okay, so Paul's asked a question. You started this session describing how there's been a stronger shift towards favoring the cardholder. Does that also apply to B2B scenarios where the cardholder is a business paying for another business? Yes, but this is where in the B2B space, there's usually going to be a lot more documentation. There's going to be contracts. There's going to be service agreements. You don't see nearly, at least I haven't seen in my conversations, nearly the amount of the fraud in those three circumstances, right? Unauthorized, friendly fraud, quality, those are in the B2B space. A B2B usually has a little bit more vetting that takes place. Now, granted, if I establish myself as a fraudulent business, I have a bunch of stolen credit cards, and I start buying stuff from other businesses in a B2B setting, there's always that risk. And then in those cases, obviously, that B2B business is going to lose. But the likelihood of the B2B, because the customer clientele makeup is a little bit different, you're not going to see as many of those issues. Last question here from Derek. Even if the merchant has a sign up saying all sales are final, they will still lose. Correct. Absolutely. Again, the all sales are final doesn't mean anything in vast majority of situations. Okay. Like, I'm not saying that merchants shouldn't do it. What they need to understand is they need to understand the expectations around it, because by having all sales are final might keep chargebacks from being here and keep them down to here, right? So they still do it because we want that understanding, but they need to just understand that it doesn't mean they have ultimate protection, that they have a responsibility to make things right with the cardholders. Looks like that is the last question for our chargeback session. So, and you're going to see these slides throughout the day. Here's my name, my email address. If you have any questions about this session or need anything, feel free to hit me up by email and I'll get it back to you.